Hello and welcome to Eerie Earth. I'm your host Kieran. Thank you for joining. Fantasy, magic, elves, dwarves, princes and princesses. All things you would find common in a Dungeons and Dragons game. But for first-time writer CTA Richards, this is what's in his head. In this episode of Eerie Earth Extra, in conjunction with Eerie Nerd Podcast, I am joined by CTA Richards, who is with me to discuss his brand new book. This interview was recorded on the 5th of September, 2023. So welcome to Eerie Earth. We're here to talk about your brand new book, Adventures of Ty. So do you want to start off by telling us just a little bit about yourself, just so the listeners who may not have read your book yet might like to know a wee bit about you?
Sure. So my name's Chris. Full name Christopher Thomas Albert Richards, hence the name on my book. I'm from Bristol, as you can tell by my lovely southwestern England accent. And yeah, so that's what I've got to say really. And I have a condition called cystic fibrosis, which affects my lungs, and I have to be regular. I have to be monitored regularly on that condition, unfortunately, because it can get quite bad.
So what inspired you to write the book to start off with? Like, well, what was your inspiration behind it?
So basically, I am a huge anime fan and a huge fantasy fan. I decided, after reading Dragon Ball Z and reading Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, I thought, why don't I have a go at this myself? So I've kind of fused my two loves together, and I've kind of ended up with the Adventures of Ty, and I must say it works really well.
And what can you tell us about the book?
So basically, it's set in a fantasy world called Eden, where Ty is the main character. In his world, every so often, there's a balance, like yin-yang, so to speak. Every so often, the darkness in his world builds up, and the god decides to choose a hero of light to fight back so he can restore the balance, so everything doesn't go wrong.
Presumably, Ty is this hero of light.
Yeah, Ty is the hero. He's the hero of light. He travels through Eden with his team that he gets along the way. It's kind of like, think of an old Japanese video game, like an RPG where you're the hero and he gains party members as he goes throughout the world. That's the best I can describe that.
So you mentioned, obviously, your love for anime and your love for your fantasy, and you've just kind of touched on it there, the Japanese sort of video games. Was that a big kind of selling point for yourself to write the book? Is to base it on something like
basically what it was is I decided, obviously anime fans like myself, we're even watching anime, where our eyes are glued to the screen, all the flashing lights and stuff. Not good for anyone. And then obviously when you read a manga, it's from right to left, and it's all covered with pictures, kind of like a comic book. So I decided when I made this that I wanted to create a book. So people in that world, such as that world that I'm into, will read a book for the first time in their life. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So do you think that writing the book is a lot of inspiration is from manga? Because obviously you mentioned the manga side of things.
I'd say it's 50-50 really, because I absolutely adore Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter. So, their worlds that they wrote, J.R.R. Tolkien, J.K. Rowling, they are just everything about their world is just amazing. When I grew up, reading these books, watching the films that everyone loves, I thought, now these are based on a book, so surely their books must have a lot more content, and they did. And that's when I fell in love with fantasy.
Obviously, you mentioned Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. Is there other influences from the fantasy genre that you've taken them from, or is it just kind of those two?
I know it's silly, but just those really, because I haven't really expanded out much. If you count superheroes as fantasy, which I suppose technically they are in their own way, then I would say Marvel's comics have also been a huge help in that as well, because of all their different characters and all their different stories and how they progress and stuff.
So obviously, writing a book is quite a taxing sort of thing to take on. What would you say was the most difficult part about it?
Spelling. I am absolutely awful at spelling. So obviously, because I get there, weird, wired, and all that sort of muddled up when I'm writing, quiet. So that was quite difficult to try, and months and mouths trying to learn all how to spell and stuff, because that was quite difficult. And that's kind of what held me back quite a lot, because it was like, oh, if I wrote that word, I mean, even though spell check tells you this word is right or this word is wrong, it's then, well, how do you use grammar with this word? So I struck, because in school, in year 3 and 4, I was quite good at spelling and all that sort of stuff. Then I went into year 5, and I had a teacher who absolutely just did not help me. He made me the worst in his class on purpose. So he wouldn't give me help when I wanted it and that sort of stuff. So in the end, like, my spelling and all that just went to poo, basically. And I had to restart. And because I didn't have much of a good life in school, when I decided to write this book, it was so difficult just because of my spelling and my grammar.
Well, it's quite inspirational that you've been able to do it, even with those hurdles in your way.
Well, my saying is never give up. Never give up. If you want something, reach for it. That is literally my saying. Going back to anime again, there's this one figure who, through my life, he's got me through everything, because regardless of what happens, he will stand up and he will fight. And that's what gives me my never give up attitude.
Brilliant. Well, you just touched on anime again there. So you mentioned Dragon Ball Z at the start. Was there other animes that you took inspiration from, or again was it just Dragon Ball Z? Because I know that you are a massive Dragon Ball Z fan, but was there other ones that you took inspiration from as well?
Well, I took huge inspiration from the big three, as they're known in Japan: Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, and Naruto. But obviously, I have a lot of other fantasy anime and all that sort of stuff that could go on forever. Like, one that I particularly love is Rising of the Shield Hero. That is an amazing anime. So obviously he's the shield hero in that world. Where there's other ones, and he just, even though he's got a shield, he's kind of trying to be the best he can, and he's doing all right. So it's just to be honest, there is so much anime that I can literally say has inspired me, but we'd be here all day.
So having read the book, how did you come up with the character names? Because some of them are rather interesting, to say the least.
It's kind of, if I'm honest with you, so Grandok is obviously, if you guys read the story yourself, he's a dwarf. I want to point something out. He is not Scottish. He is from Yorkshire. And people do say lad in Yorkshire, because I've heard it myself many, many times. So I'm putting that out there now. He's not Scottish. Because everyone's like, oh, why are dwarves always Scottish? He's not Scottish. He is not Scottish. I'm just putting that out here. So basically, I come up with the names. It's just, like, because you kind of look at a fantasy book and you ask yourself the same question: how in the bloody hell did these people come out with these names? And you kind of, if I'm honest, being a fantasy writer, you sit there and you think, what is a good word? And the amount of times I went through 2 words and trying to fuse them together, and it's quite difficult. But suddenly you just put 2 words together and you think, oh my god, this works. This actually works. And then obviously you go on the internet, you try and make sure they're not rude or anything like that. And yeah, I would just say that's how you come up with their names, really.
Perfect, lovely. Because there are some really interesting character names, like Jacus, and that's an interesting spelling of the name as well.
Yeah, Jacus obviously is based on my brother, because when we were younger, we used to play Adventures of Tai. We go outside and play with your friends. Like, Adventures of Tai has been something in my life since I was about 10, 11. And I always knew I wanted to do something with it. Does that make sense? So we used to, because obviously my little brother is called Jake. I kind of made him a psychic to Tai in the very, very first draft of Adventures of Tai. And when we were really young, he really wanted his name Jake. I put him in front of the name, and Hercules. Because Hercules' story is Odysseus, and his travels through ancient Greece and stuff. Because I have plans, obviously, for characters in the future, so I can't spin anything here. But there is a reason I've used Hercules with him.
That's really sweet that you've managed to incorporate your brother into it. That's really sweet, because it means that it means something very personal to you, and it's a kind of a very sweet sentiment, which is really nice. Can you explain to me what the process of your writing is? Because obviously a lot of people feel that they can just go ahead and just write a book. I mean, I've done it myself, of just sitting down going, right, I'm going to write a book. But I always get to a point where I'm like, nah, I've had enough now. What is the process from conception all the way to the final product?
So my ideal is obviously you do get a point where you just say, "Oh, sod this, I'm done," and you put it aside. I've done it many times for eventually time. But what I found is my best thing to do was when I thought sod it and just pushed it aside for a couple of months, because it did. I didn't just write it in a week or something like that. It was a fair 5-6 months. You get to a point in the book and you just think, I am so done with seeing just white and black lines. It's all jumbled up. Don't know what's happened next. Then I find you just walk away from it, but you constantly got it in your mind because you think, oh God, I really want to get back to that. Really want to get back to that. Look at other sources for inspiration. Don't just sit there and go, oh, bugger it out, I'll go back to it. And then you'll find you won't go back to it because you won't take your kind of inspiration on a certain scene from a film or something. You just kind of relate it back and you just think, oh, I could use that if I change this, and this. And then you just kind of, do you know what I mean? So you just
absolutely
the inspiration from a scene, but you don't do it the same because people are just like, that's a freaking copyright right there. But you just have to add your own tell into it, so to speak. And then get a notebook, literally, because I've got an awesome notebook, and you just literally write in it. You think, oh, that would look great there. And then you find obviously where it will fit in your story. But I also tended to find in this notebook, which I did, is I put bullet points. So like, Ty does this, he meets this person, he then does this. So it's like it helps you. Then you just kind of expand on the bullet points. Then you weave them together. You're like when you've got a sewing needle and you're sewing. And that's the best way I would say it. And then eventually you'll find that you want to write these scenes. So you'll then come back to it eventually because it always worked for me.
That's really cool. That's a really cool insight into just how kind of your brain works, because a lot of people just start writing and just hope for the best and don't really think about the external things. But it makes me come back to your inspirations of Lord of the Rings and J.K. Rowling. Tolkien is very famous for writing his world and all of his history and everything before he even started writing The Hobbit and before he even started writing Lord of the Rings, whereas J.K. Rowling is very famous for writing all of her notes in longhand. So she had notebooks just full of all these different notes, and she's very well known for just writing as she goes her world and adding things in, taking things out, and that's why there's quite a lot of plot holes in her in the world of going, well, why can't she just do this? Because she was just writing it as she went. Was the world of Eden that you created, was that one that you had planned prior to writing, or was that one that you just added to?
I have literally, if I'm honest with you, I have a world map drawn out. I have notes. I've got the very first event that happened in the universe all the way up to Ty. So there is no, I mean, sometimes obviously on the fly you think that doesn't work, boom, that doesn't work, change that. But yeah, no, I've got the whole history of from the birth of the universe all the way up to Ty, like, the events that created the universe, light versus darkness, that sort of thing. They went bang, created neutral energy. That's where Eden is. So yeah, I've got everything planned out.
Okay. So is that are you hinting that you're going to be writing another one, or is that?
We'll have to see on that front, because it's all about sitting down in front of that laptop again. But all I'm saying is I have ideas.
Talking about the book itself, the physical copy of the book, I've got it in my hands right now. The cover is very interesting, and that was something that you designed yourself. Is that correct?
I did indeed, yes. My publishers at first, they weren't too keen on it. They said, we have to send this through to our artist department, because obviously they do everything themselves, don't they, in publishers, and they weren't so happy about it. And then suddenly, maybe a couple of weeks after I sent off, they just sent me a cover through.
What did they say they didn't like about it?
They just said it was too, I think it was too colourful. It didn't look quite right, like his coat or something. I can't, something like that. And I was like, well, I can redraw it, but they wouldn't allow me to redraw it. So I don't know what happened in that situation, if I'm honest. And then I just suddenly got this idea through with 2 cover designs, which was that one and the same one, but the writing was different. So what I did is I said, I like the writing on the second one. Obviously, I like how you've laid out the first one. So then they just fused them together for me.
Well, I mean, the book itself has turned out very well. And are you happy with the way it's turned out and the final product?
Yeah, I am very happy with it, to be honest. So basically, I sent it off to a few Instagram people, and I have had a review come back so far for about 4 out of 5 stars. So
Fantastic.
You can't really fault that, can you?
No, absolutely not. The reviews, the reviews, they speak wonders, and if you're getting good reviews on it, then you should be very happy with that. So if people wanted to buy the book, where would they be able to buy it?
So you can buy it on Amazon. What can't you buy on Amazon these days? Waterstones, W.H. Smith's. For some reason, is on eBay, and I'm sure there's other sites out there that my publishers haven't told me about. But just have a look around. But main ones, Olympia Publishers, can't forget them. But so Olympia Publishers, Amazon, Waterstones, and W.H. Smith's.
Fantastic. I'll put all that in the description of the video as well, and the links to where you can buy the book as well. And where can people find out about you if they wanted to follow you to see if you were working on anything else?
So obviously I have Twitter, on Instagram, at Christopher_Richards90.
Okay, I'll pop that in the description below as well.
And you can find me on X, as it's now called, which is C_T_A_Richard. So basically my book stuff.
And will there be information on that if you do decide to start working on a sequel? Because I'm sure anyone who's read the book will be very excited to see where the adventure goes.
I mean, of course. I mean, if my reading and all that, because I'm currently reading Ready Player One, so I put that out. So anything to do with literacy, I will obviously be posting things. So information on the next book would definitely be put up there if it happens.
Fantastic. So is there anything you'd like to say to the readers who have read the book so far, or that you'd like to say to people who would be interested in reading the book?
So if you've read it, obviously, I hope you really enjoyed it, as obviously that's my passion put into a book. If you haven't read it, then basically, yes, it is based on anime and it is based on fantasy, but it's worth a read because obviously anyone can read fantasy and it just drops you in straight away. One of my reviewers said it's a really, really interesting way to read a book and read the actual chapters themselves, and she did say it worked very, very well.
Fantastic. Well, Chris, thank you very much for joining me today and talking about your book, and I will be following your progress very, very closely, and you are more than welcome to come back on the show. Oh, you're more than welcome. Thank you for having me. And that was Chris Richards talking about his brand new book, Adventures of Tai. It is available on Amazon, eBay, Waterstones.com, WHSmith.com, and OlympiaPublishers.com as well. Be sure to check it out. You will not be disappointed. Please follow Chris on all social media as well and support this brand new writer. If you enjoyed this podcast, then be sure to follow Eerie Earth for more. Thanks very much, guys. Bye-bye for now.